Okay, 3, 2, 1. Thank you for joining us for a very special mashup of Retro Game Club and Nerd Noise Radio. This is a special get-together of Hugh and I to celebrate a very special subject. Take it away, Hugh.
Yeah, we are talking about the best, or at least our favorite, game soundtracks of the 2010s. So this decade kind of flew by for me. Probably did for you, I don't know.
It did. It definitely did.
Yeah, but there was a ton of great game music this decade. Some of it retro styled, like what we're enjoying right now, and some of it, more modern. And we decided, let's do a little mashup and talk about our 10 or 11 favorite soundtracks of this past decade.
The things that grabbed us and spoke to us the most. And our mix today will be very heavily biased towards modern sounding music. We have this retro piece and one more retro themed piece, and everything else is quote unquote new school.
Yeah, so this is Do or Die from Retro City Rampage by Norin Rad. Very, what's the word I'm looking for? Very successful chiptune composer. Done a lot of good stuff.
Yeah, he is definitely a prolific name. As best I can tell, this is straight up faithful to the 2A03 also. So, NES music, not like NES Plus, like so much of the stuff you hear out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it started as an NES game. And obviously when he moved it to, I think WiiWare might have been the first platform it was released on. No, it was like Vita PS4, something like that, or PS3. Jeez. And the developer, Brian Princiano, kept everything still NES style.
Yeah, I mean, you play the game and the sprite work is NES style. It's the NES color palette. The only thing that's different is the screen ratio is 16:9. So, yeah, it's a very great... I don't know if faux NES game is the word, but it's definitely a very faithful tribute to the system. It's a really great, compelling example of kind of straight ahead chip rock. There's not a lot. I mean, it doesn't try to do too much. It's just straight ahead. You got the solo here. You kind of got the driving track. It's really good.
Yeah, it's kind of a short loop. I think we just got to the next loop, and it's yeah, you can play in the background for a long time before you get annoyed by it. Yeah, and the other part of this is, like the kind of, I'm not good with musical terms, but that real, kind of fluttery part there, it really fits with the game itself. If you play it, it's Grand Theft Auto, but 8-bit style, and very kind of high energy game, except for one subquest, which is intentionally boring. And this just fits the game perfectly. That's part of what makes a good soundtrack to me too, is like, if it fits the game. I mean, you ever played a game where the soundtrack just has nothing to do with the game?
Plock.
Yes.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. It definitely goes. It's definitely nice when it ties in. But for me, the music is almost kind of king. So I'd rather have a bad or mediocre game with great music than the other way around. But then I'd also rather have great music that doesn't fit a game than mediocre music that does.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you say we keep it with some chip tunes for a little bit, or faux chip tunes?
Well, this is not I wouldn't say this is a faux chip tune. The next one, our next track is "Strike the Earth" from Shovel Knight, composed by Jake Kaufman. So let's give that a listen. You just heard Strike the Earth from Shovel Knight, composed by Jake Kaufman, available on multiple platforms. Hugh, have you ever played this game before?
No, I'm very embarrassed to admit I've not played this game. I know I would absolutely love this game. It's on my kind of list of shame. I know I should play it.
It is an excellent game. I have nothing but good to say about it. It really, everyone compares it to Mega Man, which is mostly fair, except you don't get the boss's weapons. It's almost, the mechanics of it are probably closest to Wampum, which I trust you have played.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, but then the level layouts, there's kind of a map, an overworld map situation, and there's several areas that are kind of fun little vignettes. So it follows the formula in the gameplay mechanic pretty well, but it doesn't follow it kind of in the overworld, the overarching scheme of the game. But it is a lovely game. The art design is kind of what I'd call NES Plus, more colors, bigger sprites, but still kind of the same aesthetic. When they were talking about Sonic Mania, I think they said it best. They designed Sonic Mania to look like how we remembered Sonic 2 looking. So you play it and you're like, this looks exactly like the Genesis game, but then you look at it side by side and you're like, no, they're cheating all over the place. So that's kind of what Shovel Knight is. The music, though, I said earlier that I wouldn't even call it fake, because as far as I know, this is completely faithful to the VRC6 situation, just like the Japanese version of Castlevania 3. It was the NES system plus the extra sound chip, and I think they stuck completely to that.
Yeah. I mean, so the composer Jake Kaufman also goes by Vert on Overclocked Remix. So I was a big fan of his. I didn't really know about his other soundtracks before. Before this, I mostly knew him from Overclocked Remix, and then started seeing his name on a lot of games in the past decade. So in addition to this, he worked on Retro City Rampage, not the track we played, but other tracks. Worked on the Shantae games, a ton of other stuff, DuckTales Remastered. Big fan of his work overall, both his remixes and his original tunes.
Yeah, no, he does a really good job with it, matching that style. It's kind of like, this to me kind of sounds like, what if Mega Man was medieval? There's kind of this bass run, this big uplift, and it almost gives me a bit of a Mike Rutherford from pre-pop 70s era Genesis, back when they were still progressive and artsy.
Yeah, when they had like the big costumes, like they dressed as a ham sandwich or something, whatever. What was that?
You got the right band, but you're going even further back. That was. Okay. Trivia? Do you know who the original lead singer of Genesis was? It wasn't Phil Collins.
Well, it was Peter Gabriel back when he was the guy in the big ham sandwich costume or whatever it was. They had like different novelty costume changes they would do during the show.
Right? Yeah, exactly. Now, there were two tracks in this game that actually were not composed by Jake Kaufman. They actually were composed by Minami Matsume, the composer of the original Mega Man.
Yeah, I like when they do that, like when they talked about the Streets of Rage remake. Did that ever come out? I don't remember.
I think it's coming out very soon.
Yeah, and they talked about bringing back Yuzo Koshiro for some tracks on that, too.
They brought in a bunch of other big names. There was, I want to say, Yoko Shimomura's involved. I know Motohiro Kawashima is involved, the sidekick to Yuzo Koshiro.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's involved. So, anyway, yeah, I don't know how much more I really have to say about this track. It's so much fun.
Yeah.
It's like it has the promise. It holds out the promise of a grand adventure.
Mm-hmm. And it's a long, for a chiptune song, it's pretty long. I think it runs about 1:30 before it loops. So it's again, like the previous one, you aren't getting like burned out hearing the same like 15 seconds of music on endless loop.
Right. Exactly. Well, so what do you have for us next, Hugh?
Yeah, we're going to get into some more modern-ish music. Anyone who follows my site or any of my other various podcasts knows I'm a big fan of Falcom games, even though they're kind of scarce in America. So this one is from a game called Tokyo Xanadu that was a PS4 and Vita release, and the title is My Blaze, My Truth. All right, so this is by Falcom Sound Team JDK, which is what they generically credit all their compositions by. But the actual people who worked on this, and I'm going to butcher every one of these names, is Hayato Sonata, Mitsu Singa, Takahiro Unisuga, and Koji Sekaguchi. None of those pronounced correctly.
Just as you promised.
Yes, all butchered. I apologize to all of them in the very rare event that they listen to this.
And this is Tokyo Xanadu, My Blaze, My Truth.
Yes.
This track is such a fantastic example of the ability, especially it seems especially with Eastern composers, to include heavy elements in a piece that's not heavy. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? You've got the heavy chugging guitar, you know, the bright active bass, you know, but then you've got this soaring beautifulness over top of it, the lushness. You know, this is not a heavy piece at all, but there's just it's magical how they can do that, you know.
Yeah, they combine like sort of electronic sounds and metalish sounds, and it's just a good mashup of different styles.
Sure, but I think it's the soaringness of kind of the melody and the, you know, that kind of takes it out of the mosh pit. Mm-hmm. So, and I'm not a great big fan of like really heavy hard rock and music. There's a place in my life for that. It's a nice place to visit from time to time, but it's not where I really like to live. It's not country music where I have no love for it at all, but it's also not like my jam. Yeah. You know, but tracks like this don't even kind of strike me as being a part of that world. Mm-hmm. You know, there's so much other stuff going on that it doesn't really take me there.
Yeah, so this song is sort of used to try and get you like ramped up, or amped up, I guess, for a big confrontation near the end of the game.
Ah, okay. All right, I can kind of picture it in my head, walking towards the final confrontation.
Yeah. I mean, the game itself has a lot of like chill, like walking around town music, and some, you know, like you're fighting in a dungeon, more up-tempo music. So it's got the soundtrack itself is it's like got 40 different tracks, and there's a lot of different styles in it.
Cool. Well, it's a game that I've never played, so I will definitely have to look into that soundtrack some more.
Yeah. All right, we're gonna move along to something I assume everybody has played, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Is this one of the biggest games of the decade?
Yes, it is. And you know, the funny thing is I'm sort of kind of cheating here, because this game was used in Smash Bros. Ultimate, which came out last year, which makes it count. But it's identical to the version in Super Smash Bros. Brawl from like 2008. So this is really a 2008 track that just kind of got grandfathered in by being reused. But it is Norfair from Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. And we're going to hold the composer and arrangement information till the other side. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. was Norfair from Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Composed by Hirokazu Hip Tanaka and arranged by, I think you probably have figured it out by now, Hugh.
I guessed Yuzo Koshiro because I know he was involved in it.
Yeah, it's Yuzo.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was kind of hoping that'd be like a big reveal, but when you started mentioning Yuzo, I'm like, dang it, this is going to be flat.
Yeah. Well, it's got a little bit of his, kind of techno-y style. You can pick up some traces of it. I didn't really even recognize this as being Norfair until about 2 minutes into the song. Like, that's how good of a mix it is, I think.
The thing and there's so many things I like about this track. I could go on and on, but I really like how it starts off so desolate. I mean, the whole idea of Metroid is you're this bounty hunter, you're all alone on this hostile planet. It really, I mean, when you get into the track, it gets a little bit more up tempo a bit. Maybe it doesn't keep that vibe quite so much, but it really does kind of have that feeling of being out there all by yourself. Even the voices, the little voice clips that happen, you would think that brings some humanity back to the situation, but they're so disembodied, they're so kind of distorted that you don't get that. It just, I don't know, it almost kind of adds to it.
Yeah.
So I love the rich bass in the track. It's not an overpowering bass. It's not just it's everything in this track is tastefully weird. He manages to do both at the same time. My favorite part is and I lost this. This will be cut out in the edit, but I was an idiot and hit stop when we started talking, and so we're not listening to the same moment in music anymore. But I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. Is it that change up right around like the 2 minute mark or 2:15 mark? There's like a couple change ups late in the song. That to me is my favorite part. Like, that's when it really becomes like recognizable as the Metroid theme, but they just almost warps the song completely at that point, but it doesn't sound like distorted or out of place.
Yeah, with like the weird glitchy voice and the big kind of square wave drop kind of thing. Yeah, I think we're probably talking about the same thing.
Yeah.
Right towards the end before it loops back around. So, yeah, this is probably my favorite piece of music from all of the Smash Brothers universe.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sort of biased towards some of the Zelda tracks that are remixed, but this one's really, really good, no doubt.
Well, it's also interesting to see two masters of the genre. I mean, they're not working together directly, but one master is working off the works of another master, and it's just, of course, that part carries over across the entire spectrum of Smash Brothers music. But I think this is my standout piece.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's weird. I don't play a ton of Smash Brothers. My kids play it a lot, but they don't really play it like a fighting game. It's sort of weird. I mean, they basically pick two characters and invent a backstory for why they're fighting, and then reenact it's almost more like pro wrestling, where they don't actually I don't think they're actually trying to win a fight. I think they're trying to create some sort of theatrical experience with it.
That's fascinating. I've never heard anyone use the game that way. That's actually really creative.
Yeah.
Okay, so what do you got next?
What do I have next? That's a good question. Let me scroll down on the show notes here. Oh yeah, so this gonna be a surprise to some people. This is gonna be my the game that I think is my favorite soundtrack of the entire decade, and that is Kirby's Epic Yarn. Something that I put on probably at least once a week when I'm trying to work on something. And the composer is Tomoya Tomita, who I think this might be the first soundtrack that he's fully credited on as being like the lone composer. And the track we're going to play is Dino Jungle. So yeah, Dino Jungle, Kirby's Epic Yarn. It's a game I played through twice in this decade on both Wii and 3DS. Very fun platformer. And yeah, the music, like every stage that you're playing, the music just fits the stage perfectly. Like this even has kind of with the drums and the, I don't know if it's maraca, but the shaker effect, kind of gives you a little bit of a jungle feel, and the fire stages sound like you're actually in a fire, like, and so on. Just an all-around great experience, this game.
And that's the feedback that I've constantly received about it. I've not played it, but I've seen pictures of it, some short videos of it. The aesthetic of it is really fantastic. And Nintendo really does have that knack of getting the, especially when it's something really cute and charming. They really have the knack of nailing that. This beginning part here sounds so weird to me. It sounds so out of step with the rest of it because that weird kind of jazz piano, reminds me of like Steely Dan, like Two Against Nature. But then you get here, and now it's like, and I say this completely as a compliment, but it's like kids' play place. You know what I mean? It's just, it's bright, it's fun, it's charming. Ah, what a joy this track is.
Yeah. Well, that's what Kirby's Epic Yarn is. It's a game where you can't die.
Okay.
There's literally no way to die in the game. So it is sort of like more accessible maybe for younger players who haven't done difficult platformers. But if you're a veteran player, there's the challenge of trying to like get through the level without taking damage because you get bonuses for that. So like it's a good mix of easy and difficult.
Oh, cool. So they found a way to work in the goodies for the more veteran players.
Yeah.
Okay. Excellent. Well, this is definitely going to be one that I plan on getting. You said it's on Wii and 3DS,
Yeah,
right?
They did a remake for 3DS, just this year maybe?
Okay, that's right. Yeah, I think I'll get the 3DS version so I can play it on the go.
Yeah. In the 3DS version, they had like amiibo support and a bunch of other like stuff that didn't exist for the Wii.
Cool. Yeah. Okay. I will. This is definitely going to be on my buy it list. So the next soundtrack is, before we get into the music, this was probably, of all the soundtracks we featured, this was the one that was hardest for me to pick an individual track. I think you said this was the soundtrack that you had the hardest time picking out a track, right?
Yeah, Kirby's Epic Yarn was very, very tough to pick just one song that represents the soundtrack well.
Yeah. Well, this one, gosh, it was easy. I discovered the soundtrack in 2018 when they were announcing the Switch version of the game, and fell instantly in love. And it's just like you almost. I can barely go a few weeks without just, I'm at work, I'm going to put this soundtrack on and listen to the whole thing over and over again. The soundtrack is Art of Balance, and it was a game that appeared several times. It was originally a WiiWare game, came out in 2010, and then it was a Wii U and a PS4 game, I want to say 2014 or give or take, and then last year it came out on the Switch, which is where I discovered it. So we're going to hear World D, and it's composed by Martin Scholler. Okay, that was World D from Art of Balance, composed by Martin Scholler. Hugh, what did you think of this track?
You know what? I listened to this and I thought it sounds like you're going to a spa. You know, like some place with a bunch of like weird healing oils in the background. I don't know if you've ever been to one of those places, but it's got kind of that vibe to it. And then when I look at what you're doing in the game, like the scenery of the game kind of fits that too.
Oh, I know. Yeah, talk about a soundtrack that really fits the vibe of the game. You know, I almost like, when I played through the game, I played all the way through, and it was a very enjoyable play experience, but the game was almost happening in the background. You know, the vibe, the ambiance of the game, not just the music, but the aesthetics of it. You know, really, I stayed for the game. I came for the show. You know,
Yeah.
It came at a really interesting time in my life too. My dad's been in and out of the hospital the past couple of years, and this was right around the first time he went in, and you know, it was, you know, he's okay, and he's, you know, gonna be okay, but it got me through. It kind of got me through that, because the first time was the scariest time, you know, because you haven't really been through this, so you don't know. But we're close enough to my favorite part of the track that we'll let it loop back around, but there's a certain part to the track that really stands out to me as an absolute kind of showstopper. But yeah, this whole soundtrack, this is probably the most mellow piece in the whole soundtrack, but the least mellow piece is not that. No, this is the mellowest piece, but
it's mellow.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I'm saying the least mellow piece is not that much less mellow. I mean, the whole thing is just so smooth. It's just lounge music, you know. The thing that just happened, I don't know, kind of, I don't even know how to describe it. Kind of the shaky, you know, I don't know. I picture like in a Ibiza lounge kind of thing with big, like, wall-sized windows open on the ocean, you know, and but the thing that's coming up just around the corner here, this is the thing I was talking about. It's just so, this part, it's just so, I don't know, it's like happily sterile, you know, like this is a tranquil place that I can stay and just soak it in and be clean. It's like, I don't know, it almost makes me want to take a bath, you know.
Yes. Well, yeah, I mean, and what you're doing in the game, you're trying to stack blocks, right? You're trying to create these towers that don't fall over.
Right.
And obviously, if you had jarring music all the time, it would not help with that.
No, not some art piece where someone comes in with like a banging on a piano keys kind of thing. No, it really is perfect for the game, and it's a really great game too. It was made by Shin-En, the same company that made Fast Racing Neo. So very different game for them. And they're actually a German company. I mean, with a name like Shin-En and all the Japanese stuff they put into their game, you wouldn't suspect that they're a German company, but they are.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I guess that by the composer name.
You know, I'm not entirely sure that's even a proper German name. I don't know, because, you know, the O with the line through it, that's more of a Nordic thing. But then, you know, and I'm stepping outside of my field of expertise here by a long shot, but I don't think the SCH, that's a German thing. I don't think that's like a Swedish or Norwegian thing, but whatever. Yeah. Martin, if you're listening, tell us what ethnicity you are. So, okay, what do you got next for us?
Oh, yeah, so let's stick with another kind of, mellow, ambient, relaxing song here. And we're going to go to L.A. Noire, another game that came out twice this decade. So it was originally a PS3 release at the start of the decade, and then was remade for every platform that exists today. We're going to play, let's go with Noir Clarinet. All right. So yeah, LA Noire. This is a game where I like everything about the game except for the game, if that makes sense. Like, I like the atmosphere, I like the kind of premise of the game, and I really like the soundtrack a lot. Did not care for the story very much. But the rest of the atmosphere around the game, I think, is pretty amazing. I'd like to see more games set in that era with this style of music for sure.
Yeah, no, the music. Well, I've only played maybe an hour and a half of the Switch version of the game, so I don't know it well enough to really. I can't speak intelligently to the story, but you're right. The aesthetic is really fantastic, and the best part of the aesthetic is the music. I mean, you'd be forgiven to think this was actually from a movie of the period. You know what I mean? The choice in instrumentation is so spot on. Although I am amused by the fact this track's called Nor Clarinet, and really the saxophone is the real star of the show.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
So, and if I'm not mistaken, that the range of that clarinet sounds too low. So I think we're actually talking Nor bass clarinet anyway.
Yeah.
So
we didn't mention it. This is by Andrew and Simon Hale, who I just assume are related. They did the soundtrack for this. I don't know a lot about the rest of their career, but they were the two main composers on the soundtrack. I don't think you have the Portillo's restaurant chain out by you, do you?
No.
Yeah. So this is the kind of music that plays in some of those. So Portillo's, they're all sort of old-timey themed. They each kind of have a different era. Like, I'd say era, like each restaurant is sort of like based on a specific year.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So the ones that are based on like, 1948, let's say, or 49, like would have basically this music playing in the background.
Okay.
If you come out to the Chicago area, you have to go to Portillo's. It's like the best chain restaurant in the area.
Cool. Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to be out there within the next several months for work. So maybe we'll grab a craft beer and check out Portillo's.
Yeah.
So my next track, and this one I'll save the story for the backside, but this one involves a story that is probably the best thing that's happened to me as a podcaster, and indeed is something that I may never surpass in my entire life. So it's that big of a story for the right audience, at least. Yeah. So anyway, we have Process Control from Gran Turismo Sport, composed by Yasuhisa Inoue. Enjoy. That was Process Control from Gran Turismo Sport on the PS4, composed by Yasuhisa Inoue.
Yeah, the song is so relaxing too. It actually makes me hungry because I feel like it's like what you listen to in a trendy sushi place.
Okay, I can hear it. Yeah, a lot of sushi restaurants that I've been to either have kind of generic Asiatic music, or they have really kind of chill, trendy stuff. You don't really have like a lot of Taylor Swift on in sushi restaurants.
Yeah, that's not a good combo, really.
It's not.
No.
So
now I'll say the one thing, when I saw Gran Turismo on your playlist, like I wasn't familiar with the soundtrack, so I was really expecting something completely different.
Well, so the cool thing about the Gran Turismo series is their menu suite. Like when you're actually racing, they do have like more rock tracks and stuff, stuff to keep the energy up. But the menu suite is so robust. Like this game's menu suite, just the menu suite, is like a 50-track playlist. And most of it's stuff pretty close to this style, doesn't... It changes enough to stay interesting, but it's pretty close to this. And I think that's really great. I spent more time on Gran Turismo Sport reading the stories about Nissan and Toyota and stuff just so I could listen to this music, than actually driving a car into a barrier usually, by the way. But yeah, no, I did feature this track in the early part of this year on my show, and I really think it's my favorite track of Nerd Noise Radio of 2019. It's been everywhere. It's going to be in episode 50, which is a retrospective. It's going to be in the Best of 2019 episode next year. And then I had alluded to a great story. Mm-hmm. I got the honor of a lifetime a few months ago, and that was to guest produce an episode of NPR's Hearts of Space. Oh. Yeah, it was. It's in July. They did the episode for the lunar landing, the 50th anniversary of the lunar landing, and I had written a tribute to Hearts of Space. They saw it. I was already talking to Hearts of Space about their Android app, and Stephen Hill reached out and said, you never know who you're going to touch with a show. You never know what's going to come from that. And we're really honored that you think this much of us, and we're not gamers, and we know there's a lot of great ambient game music. Would you be willing to guest produce an episode of the show for us? So, and for those who don't know who Hearts of Space or what Hearts of Space is, it's NPR's kind of new age space ambient electronic world music. It got its start all the way back in 1973 out of a little station in Berkeley. And then in 1983 it went to national syndication. My family discovered it completely by accident on the Des Moines NPR affiliate station in like 92, 93. And so we've been fans of the show ever since. My show is inspired by Hearts of Space. I mean, the aesthetic is completely different, of course, because of the subject matter. And then I also deliberately baked in some differences because I always feel that there's the fine line between the honor of imitation and the crime of plagiarism. So I deliberately baked in some differences. But I guess my goal, quote unquote, is to be the Hearts of Space of video game music. And so, this show is my template. These guys are my heroes. I grew up with these guys. And to not even have to ask them and they said yes, but to have had them ask me if I would do this, I don't know, Hugh. I think I've peaked. I don't know if I'll ever top that. But
yeah, I mean, you could eventually take over when the host, current host retires.
No, I don't think I intend to do that. But just it was when I got the email from Stephen Hill. It was a couple days before my wife and I's 20th wedding anniversary, and my parents were taking us out for dinner, and we were on the way back to their house. I was in the back. Thank God I wasn't driving. I was in the back seat of that car, and I could no longer pay attention to anything else happening in that car. I was so overwhelmed by that. But this track was the opening track to that episode of Hearts of Space.
Nice.
So yeah. Anyway, for anyone who has access to the Hearts of Space web service, if you didn't hear the episode, it's episode 1228, Game Scores, and it came out October 19th of this year. So give that a listen. Give that a listen, definitely. So Hugh, what do you got next?
We'll go from outer space to like underground. How about?
Okay.
It's a very smooth transition here. I'm gonna go with a track off Final Fantasy 15, kind of a polarizing installment in the Final Fantasy series, but big name composer. So they brought in Yoko Shimomura to compose the majority of the soundtrack. There's kind of multiple composers on there, but she did most of the tracks. And this is one called What Lies Within. So yeah, What Lies Within, Final Fantasy 15. And this is probably the longest track we have. This is like the cave exploration theme in the game. So you hear it a lot, so it kind of has to be a long track because some of the dungeons in the game are really, really large. So you have to have something that can kind of play for a while, has that kind of creepy, in the dark feel to it, but that you don't get burned out on right away.
Right. And so the full fat version of Final Fantasy 15, I've only probably logged an hour or two, but the pocket version, the mobile version that also made it to the Switch, I did play that beginning to end. And so yeah, you're right, you do hear this music an awful lot. And what I really like is that a little later on in the track, in the grand scheme of the track, I like the whole thing. I even like the I guess dense, heavy strings at the beginning. But when it first starts, you kind of think, I don't know that I am going to like it, because there was so much, and this is going to sound really weird coming from someone like me who loves ambient music, but in the early 2000s, kind of like Summoner era games, there was so much kind of dense, dark ambience in dark places, and it really didn't go anywhere. But in this track, it almost starts off feeling like you're going to get that same vibe from it, but then it really takes you different places, and it all marries together to create this really kind of great story that fits where it is in the game very well. And yeah, it's one of those ones that I didn't think I would be a fan, and then I turned out to definitely be a fan.
Yeah, and of course you played the pocket version, which is mostly like the main story of the game, which to me is the weak part of the game. Like, in the full version, you have like an open world mode, which is, I think, great. I think it's one of the greatest games of the past decade. And the story itself is, I thought, kind of weak.
Yeah. The story is weak. But, well, and my favorite piece of music from Final Fantasy 15 is Noctis's Dream, which doesn't even make it into the pocket version.
Yeah. And I think, no, that's not... They do, in the Final Fantasy concerts, they do a couple of tracks from Final Fantasy 15. But not that one either.
Yeah, well, this does turn out to be good, a really good track, and you're right. It had better be good as often as you hear it.
Yeah.
So, the next track you had mentioned this track you think was the longest one of the outing. I hate to tell you, it is not, because the next track is the longest. The next track, all by itself, just one run through, is, I think a good 7 minutes.
Wow.
So, and I definitely have thoughts about it, but I'll save it for the flip side. What you are going to hear next is Function by Broca from the game N++. Let's dig in. That was Function from N++ by Broca. And Hugh, have you played N++?
No, I have not. Sounds like a programming language.
It does. No, it's a really interesting art style. It's not pixel art. It's more like stick people art. Okay. And everything is very minimalist in the design. It's like someone could have drawn it by hand almost. It's sort of a platformer puzzle thing. Each level is really small, kind of self-contained, and there's 4 billion ways to die, and you will die 4 billion times. And some of the levels are borderline sadistic.
Yeah.
You'll get through 20 levels without dying once, and then you'll die 50 times on the next level. But it's one of my favorites of last year. I love it's a fun, simple game to play. And I love the art style and especially the music. And the music, it's a playlist. I don't know how many tracks are on there, maybe 50, maybe 60. They don't all sound exactly like this one, but actually a lot of them have more, I wouldn't call it techno. Everything has a certain chillness to it, like this, but a lot of it has more of a pounding bass kind of thing. There's one where you hear people, little voice clips of people speaking German, that kind of stuff. But it really kind of works well with the ambiance of the game, especially when it almost becomes kind of mindless, I mean, yes and no. You're focusing on how to survive this sadistic torture chamber, but everything else kind of becomes background, but the music just carries you along on that wave, and I love it so much. As far as this particular track, I can only describe this track as taking you on a journey seemingly without moving at all.
Okay.
Because there's no real hook to this piece, right?
Yeah, I sort of describe it as the first 15 seconds of a dubstep song. This is the build up before there's the drop and all the crazy effects and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. But it never drops.
Right. As big as it is in terms of the space it creates, it also feels so lonely and isolating. So I guess I kind of describe it as cerebral inner space, like a journey through cerebral inner space. And if I'm not mistaken, Broca is a region of the brain, isn't it? So the fact that the composer goes by the name of a region of the brain really kind of just adds to that sense of you're exploring inside your own head.
Yeah. I like that for your tracks, you picked composers that either have done exactly one game soundtrack or have done 1,000 game soundtracks.
And the funny thing is, I didn't do that on purpose.
Yeah.
I was not. I mean, yeah. No, that's just happy coincidence.
Yeah.
Yeah. This piece is a piece to listen to, especially on a loop, if you want to just zone out. If you got to get some paperwork done, put it on loop and let it loop, and you're vaguely aware of it being there in the distance, but you're not paying any attention to it, really. It just kind of carries you through.
Yeah, it's not distracting at all.
Right, exactly. Well, so what do you have next?
I think I'm going to go with another Falcom game. I'm not going to have just 10 Falcom games. I swore that to myself, although I probably could have. I controlled myself a little bit. So this is from Ys 8, which came out here on PlayStation 4 and Switch. I think there's a PC port also. I don't remember if that got localized for the US. And this track is called One Dream, One Reality. So yeah, again, that's Falcom Sound Team JDK. Similar group as last time, only this time you also have Yokihiro Jindo. He's one of the composers who works on most of the East games. He's been part of that series for a while. Now, the thing that I think is going to get lost about this song in podcast form, and it got lost to me first time I played the game even, it wasn't until I got the album that I noticed and had this on with earbuds, that this song is actually two different songs. Like, the left and right channel on this are different songs. And they mix together into one song, which if you play the game, it makes sense why they did that. I'm not going to spoil anything about the story, but it makes sense why this, like where the song is used in the game, that they intentionally picked to have two different audio tracks going.
That's really cool. And I won't say what the story is either, but you told me about it, and it really does kind of make a lot of sense. You're right, it is kind of lost, because in the version that I'm listening to, it kind of blends together a little bit. So I wonder what happened, because it's not mono, it's still stereo, but how did they manage to blur it without, well, who knows?
Yeah, I don't know.
But it's definitely something for the listener to go check out.
Yeah. One of my favorite things about this era, in this decade, is that, like, if you like a game soundtrack, you can just go legally purchase it now. You don't have to, like, hold a tape recorder next to your Sega Genesis or something.
We all did that.
Yeah.
We all did that.
Yeah.
I love this opening instrument here. This pearly, it's not pearly, kind of a plinky thing. And I don't really know traditional Japanese instruments very well. So I went and did a quick Google search. Mm-hmm. When I was listening to it, I'm like, is that a koto? But I did, after looking at koto's like a big board with strings on it that you almost kind of pluck like a guitar. And it doesn't have this sound. It almost sounds a little more guitar-like. But I did find something called a taisho koto, which is like an auto harp sort of koto thing. It has like a little keyboard on it, and it just presses down on, the string at a certain point while you play. And the acoustic version of that does sound a little bit like this. So I wonder if I dumb lucked into it, and this is a taisho koto. But whatever the case, I love that sound. Also, the melody, it reminds me vaguely of Into the Darkness from Astral on the Saturn. Do you remember? Did you ever play Astral?
No, but I've heard the soundtrack.
Okay, all right. Yeah, it goes in a different. I mean, it's not. If you listen to it side by side, you're struck more by the differences than the similarities. But it's there, so it endeared me right away because that was always one of my favorite tracks. So yeah, this is a really great one, and I've not played Ys 8, but I've heard nothing but praise about it. In fact, my brother is playing through it now and adores it, and sent me a review asking me to read the review, and I will probably after we get off this recording. I'll finally get around to reading it, but it sounds like a great game. It's just
yeah.
With a 1-year-old in the house, do I have 80 hours to commit to it?
It depends how much of the story you want to do. It's an action RPG, and then there's some sort of story elements to it, and you can skip a lot of the story. Like, you don't necessarily have to do the whole story. It does impact the ending. Okay. But you can play through the main story, without too much time.
Okay. Cool. How far into the game is this piece? Would you say?
Pretty early.
Okay.
You first hear it. I mean, you hear it. It's used multiple times in the game, but it comes in. Yeah, fairly early. Not in the first. I won't call it the first chapter of the game. But fairly early.
Okay. Cool. Well, so we are now halfway through our tracks, but I think we're over halfway through the recordings. I think we've got kind of heavy loaded the longer tracks towards the front. My next track is actually from a mobile game. It's called Monument Valley. It's composed by Stafford Baller, and the name of the track is The Garden. Enjoy. That was The Garden from Monument Valley, composed by Stafford Baller. The game was available on iOS and Android. Have you ever played it?
I have not. It sounds like a golf game. I know you assured me it is not a golf game.
It is definitely not a golf game. It's kind of sort of an isometric puzzler with a really kind of beautiful vibe, and everything that happens in the game is to kind of teach, not you, the player necessarily, but the character, like a lesson about life. And the whole thing has this kind of really beautiful vibe about it, like we're hearing now. Mm-hmm. To me, this track with the big piano sustains and the little swirly thing that comes in any second now. Hold that thought for a second. That. I just picture like a starry night kind of thing with beautiful little things swirling around you. You know, be they fairies or just kind of magical lights, you know, kind of just swirling all around. Like a place to want to stay.
Yeah.
And the little, it's not pearly, the little kind of thing in the back just sounds like the Wii menu music slowed down.
Kinda, yeah. Yeah, I hear that.
Yeah. What did this track do for you?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's really, really calm. It has kind of this maybe glass dome kind of vibe to it. Also, like I said, a little bit like a kind of golfing game, which maybe it's a little too spacey to be a golf game. So maybe like Interstellar Golf. Is that a game? Has someone made that yet?
If not, this track would probably work. Yeah, probably work pretty well for that. Yeah.
Yeah, sounds like a Wii game, but who knows? So yeah, it's very calming. I like it. Yeah, you pick a lot of minimalist music.
It's kind of what I'm drawn to musically. I like jazz. I like kind of chill to mid-tempo electronica. I like ambient atmospheric music. Once in a great while, I'd like to go back and get some grunge, but that's like that's so non-standard for me. I tend to kind of stay not too far from this part of the musical world most of the time. Mm-hmm. So what do you got next?
Let's stick with another kind of calm, relaxing song here. This is from, I guess, one of the more well-known indie games of the past decade called To the Moon. And the song is called Having Lived. So yeah, this is composed by Ken Gao. There's also some. This is a great soundtrack. It's short. It's maybe like 8 tracks total, but it's really good. Really relaxing.
So, what's happening at this point in the game?
That's a good question. I should have prepped for that question. So the whole game, it's a very sort of, I don't know what the distinction is between like video game and interactive fiction. It's really more of like an interactive fiction game.
Okay.
Because there's not a lot of like gameplay in it. I like interactive fiction games, so it's not a put down of the genre at all. And a lot of it is like flashbacks. The whole game is sort of told in memories. So this is obviously going to be a memory sequence. So there's a lot of that. I mean, this is a game I I recommend for people who like interactive fiction games, but would not recommend for really anybody else. It's a little deceptive because the game stylistically looks like Chrono Trigger, but it's really not. I mean, it's really like one of those Japanese interactive fiction games that we didn't get in America. Only this one was made in America.
Okay. I've played a couple games like, you mean kind of like an interactive anime where you've got the background and then the characters pop up and there's the text box and they'll kind of get a little bigger when they're talking and...
No, not really. That's why it's deceptive. It's, like I said, it's like playing Chrono Trigger. Like, it's similar graphics and you're walking around talking to people, but it's all in that sort of like 2D RPG, and there's not really, like, you don't make choices that impact the game. There's not really action sequences or anything. It's like you're experiencing a story that's being told in the style of, like, imagine if you played Chrono Trigger but there weren't any battles.
Okay, all right, I gotcha. Yeah, having heard this music, I thought it sounded like it would either be like a bittersweet ending to a long adventure, or maybe a scene where they're eulogizing a beloved character.
Yeah.
I had not heard this music before we prepared for this episode, but now this is I've heard it several times in that process. I think I always liked this track, but I think this listen was the listen where this track really got me. I mean, this is a really great track. It kind of has that intro sequence to Final Fantasy X, where they're all kind of sitting along the wreckage and then the Final Fantasy logo pops up. It really kind of has that feel.
Yeah. I mean, it's not a happy game. Sort of like that scene in Final Fantasy X, I guess, without spoiling it. Like, you watch it in the intro, and it doesn't seem... It's clearly kind of downer music, but not until you actually get to that scene in Final Fantasy X do you realize, like, how, downer of a scene that really is.
Mm-hmm.
You played all the way through Final Fantasy X, I hope.
Well, I made it to the final battle, and then I couldn't beat it because I ran from too many random battles.
Oh, okay.
I wasn't self-disciplined enough. I made it to the end, but couldn't finish.
Yeah, that's crazy. Because, like, so you didn't actually make it to the second to last boss then?
Well, I don't know.
You if I remember Final Fantasy X correctly, you literally cannot lose to the last boss.
Oh well, maybe I made it to the jet battle, not the jet battle. The
jet battle.
Yeah, jet battle.
Yeah, so he's actually the second to last boss.
Oh, okay. Yep, that's where I got.
That's where you have the Joseph Campbell literal confrontation with the father archetype.
Okay. Well, it was a really good story. Maybe I'll buy the remaster and try to be a little more disciplined this time.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
My next track, you were talking about how heavy into the atmospheric and the, kind of ethereal I've gone. This next track might be, if that's a high point for you, the listener, this might be one of the high points of the episode. If that's a low point for you, then I apologize. Because we're going to go really deep into space for this one. We just went from the moon. We went to the moon. Now we're going to the stars. And this is from Prune. This is another mobile game, iOS, Android, also Windows 10 Universal Windows app. Mm-hmm. So it's composed by Kyle Preston, and I hope you enjoy. That was To the Stars from Prune for iOS, Android, and Windows, composed by Kyle Preston. What'd this do for you?
My first impression of this was that it sounded a lot like the Gone Girl soundtrack. It's hard to describe other than it's a very, very similar vibe.
Okay.
I know they're not related in any way at all, but that's another sort of like dark ambient album.
Okay.
And this has a kind of dark ambient feel to it.
Right. Yeah. Well, this whole kind of texture it starts with before the strings come in, I can only describe it as beautiful dissonance. Mm-hmm. There's all these notes that are clashing, but it doesn't sound ugly. It sounds beautiful. It sounds rich, While I'm thinking about it, this track was another track in the Hearts of Space episode. In fact, it was reused. It was towards the end, and then it was reused at the very end. And then Monument Valley was also part of the Hearts of Space episode, and I forgot to mention that while we were talking about it. But those three are the only ones that come from the Hearts of Space episode. Mm-hmm. The whole thing is bittersweet. It's beautiful, but it's kind of sad. Yeah. I don't know if I have anything really concrete to tie it to, but I just think, the majesty of space, the breaking free of the surly bonds of Earth, or possibly even of corporeality altogether, off to something else, greater, more substantial, profound. The bowed strings, though, are so warm and comforting. The fact that you've got the upright bass violin that's also being bowed, and you can almost feel that string vibrating, in your ears. It's, I don't know.
Yeah, this part right here.
Yeah. Yeah, you hear the other instruments, but you feel that bass violin. So, yeah, it's great. It's great. It was an instant winner in my part. And the thing about the game is, so, I don't even know how well this matches the aesthetic. You're growing trees, and you're trying to grow them. You're cutting parts of them off so the rest will grow up into the light and they'll bloom. Okay. Maybe later in the game it takes on a space theme. I never made it that far, but it's a really nice game. It's a really nice game, and most of the rest of the music has a similar beauty, but I think this one's the real standout.
Yeah, it's nice.
So what's up next?
What's up? I think it's impossible to talk about video games of the 2010s without mentioning Breath of the Wild. I know we're forgetting all sorts of epic 2010s games.
Right.
I'm looking at all these retrospectives, and it's Witcher 3. I'm like, oh yeah, I guess I didn't play that. Or what else was a huge? Well, Fortnite, right? I couldn't tell you what a Fortnite song sounds like. I'm sorry. Call me out of touch if you want. But in terms of big major releases, I think we hit Smash Brothers, and now we're going to hit Breath of the Wild. This is one of the flashback scenes in Breath of the Wild. It's called Mipha's Touch. Yeah, so that is Mipha's Grace. Oh, dang it. Mipha's Touch from Breath of the Wild. Multiple composers on the soundtrack. I'll list them all. I don't know who specifically did this one, but Manaka Katakoak, sorry in advance, Yasuki Iwata, and Hajime Wakai, who of course I think is well known for doing the Wind Waker soundtrack.
Okay.
Which was close. That could have been my number one soundtrack for the last decade.
Wind Waker.
Yeah.
It is a beautiful soundtrack. Then again, they all are.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so what did this track do for you?
It's it's such a. If you haven't played Breath of the Wild, this is from, a kind of sad flashback scene. I guess all flashback scenes in games are usually sad. But it has like a little tiny bit of hopefulness to it, too. So you're sort of mourning the loss of this character in the past, but you're gaining an ability that will help you ultimately defeat Ganon.
It's like their final act of love is to give you this thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Of course, everything in Breath of the Wild is optional. That's the neat thing. Like, they could have called it Legend of Zelda Optional Quest or something.
That's right.
Like all you have to do is fight Ganon. That is it. That is the only real objective in the whole game.
Right. Yeah. But the people who can go beat him on 3 hearts and a twig is just incredible. But
yeah.
Yeah, there's just so much tenderness to this track, and I think this, Link in this game, I don't think it's a spoiler to say this, but Link in this game wakes up from basically 100 years slumber, and he's basically amnesia. He basically has amnesia, and so he's slowly remembering stuff. And maybe it would be unfair to say the focus of the game is amnesia, but it's there, and you go to the Temple of Time, and the music is you can almost feel like, almost got it, like that memory that's just that millimeter out of your grasp, I think it's so amazing what they do with the music for telling that pointed of a story, without even that being the center focus of the story, but that being just a kind of thing off to the side. Breath of the Wild was very special for me. The timing of it. I was one of those guys that waited in line for a midnight release of the Switch. It's the only system I've ever did a midnight launch for. And, it was sub 20 degrees, blustery winds in West Des Moines. And here we are, 7 hours out there, 10 layers of clothes, complete strangers that became a temporary brotherhood while we waited out this thing. And the reason I waited is because getting the Switch was for me. But waiting for the Switch in line was just as much for Jody as it was for me, because that was a Friday, and that Monday she was having surgery and was going to be laid up for a week or more, and I was going to be laid up with her. Yeah. And it was really important to her for me to have this thing to while away the time. So it was just as much for her as it was for me. But this will always make me think of those sitting. It wasn't a sad time because everything went fine, but it was just. I'll always think of that hospital room. I'll always think of the living room, the first walk down the street, making sure that she was able to do it and stuff. So this game, the whole game will always have such special meaning to me because of that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good story. My experience with the game is not nearly as heartwarming.
Thank you.
I pre-ordered it for the Wii U, and then I got it, and my wife just got like a audiobook contract, and needed me out of the way for most of the weekend for a couple weeks.
Okay. So. You're right, that's not quite as romantic.
Yeah. So I stayed up in my game room and played Breath of the Wild, mostly with my kids. We would kind of alternate. We each had a save game, and we'd all kind of alternate and take different routes through it. Okay. Yeah, well, such a meaningful game for so many people, though. It's one of the highlights of the decade. So now the next track for me is another one of those indie games, and it actually got its start on the Ouya. Okay.
It's since made it to PC, it's made it to Xbox, it's made it everywhere except for the Switch, I think. But It was originally one of those Ouya dreams.
Yeah. Very yeah, I guess that's an icon of this decade, the Ouya.
Yeah. Do you have one?
I do, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I do
It's
too.
an emulation box, yeah.
Well, that's 90% of what I did with it was emulation. But yeah, I had one too. It was the dream, and maybe the dream didn't work out. I suppose you could argue that on a smaller scale, the dream didn't die, even though the Ouya did. But
yeah. Well, no, it's the Switch store now, right? I mean, the Switch marketplace, whatever it's called, the
eShop.
Nintendo shop. Yeah, it's essentially in the Android shop and the iOS shop are essentially, the dream the Ouya plan to fulfill.
Right. So the game is called So Many Me, and the track is called Outskirts. It's composed by Christopher Gehan and or Daniel Burton McCullough, collectively of Hyperduck Soundworks. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. You just heard Outskirts from So Many Me, composed by Christopher Gahan and Daniel Byrne McCullough. What'd you think of this?
Kind of coffee shop was what I thought of here. Like,
okay.
You're in a very relaxed kind of coffee shop place. You know, the owners maybe maybe it's like a husband and wife owned coffee shop. He's got a beard. She's got kind of like a bun thing going. You know what I mean? You can picture that whole thing.
Okay.
Espresso machine going. It's funny because when I looked at a video of this game, I thought, man, this music does not seem to fit the game at all.
Did you watch the part of the game where this was from? Where the
No.
big orange background and the kind of big flower things moving in the background and stuff?
No, clearly I picked the wrong scene.
Okay. Yeah, if you're looking like at a lava scene, then no, you got it wrong. Yeah, I can see that. This track for me, and talk about listener invention as opposed to composer intent. It makes me pine for a hyper idealized that is never realized early childhood. Mm-hmm. You know, it's it's magic. You know, the finger slides when they slide up playing the notes on the guitar, that gentle bass violin, the swells. But then the second time through, they add the little, and I hate how limited my vocabulary is with music, because I don't want to say plink. I mean, I want to say kind of plinky, but they're not plinky at all. You know, the little things that happen over the verse, and then the lilting flute over the second chorus. You know, it's just, it's warm. It's a beautiful place that I want to stay and never leave. You know, and it actually makes me ache a little bit that I can't.
Because the coffee there is so good?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, you got it.
Yep.
So
I like that. I really like this piece. It's good.
Yeah, it makes me very sad and very happy all at the same time. Yeah, this moment is the highlight of the piece for me. Okay, your turn.
Yeah, let's go with another Wii game. This is a game that has really only been on the Wii, and I think is overdue for some sort of remake. It's called The Last Story. There was a big campaign to try and get this game brought out to America, and it finally was in around 2012-ish. And it was composed by Nobuo Uematsu. So, big name there. Let's go with the intro to the game called Theme of The Last Story. All right, yeah. So, theme of the last story. This is another good soundtrack all around. There's a whole lot of variety in this as well. There's, towards the end of the game, like last boss fights, there's like some, full-on metal songs, and then ambient town music, dungeon music, everything you would expect from an RPG.
Right. But the thing that's so compelling about this track is that this track is less a track almost and more a miniature soundtrack. It changes so much. It does so many different things. Now this is from the intro you said, right? So it's okay. All right. So it's matching whatever's happening in the intro.
Yeah. It's kind of, giving you some, like a lot of, it comes across a lot like a Final Fantasy or Square game, obviously, because it has some of the same heritage behind it. And, it has like opening where there's various scenes of, background or things that are going to happen in the game.
Okay.
So it's pretty cool. Like I really surprised this game has not been, I don't know. I'm surprised it's not been a more successful, like, huge game. Maybe because it was a Wii game and the Wii just wasn't a system. People who really liked RPGs in that generation were not buying the Wii.
Right. Yeah. Kind of like nothing beats the N64 in terms of being terrible with RPGs.
Yeah, unless you want to get into like the Atari Jaguar. Right?
Okay, all right. You
32X. If you want to get into niche systems, but
CDI.
Yeah, CDI.
Yeah. Okay, fair enough. Of the mainstream systems, I think we could say the N64 was the worst for RPGs.
Yeah. There's Paper Mario.
Yeah. Okay. The Quest 64.
Quest 64. And then I think there's something starts with an A, Ardine's Quest, something with a name like that. I don't know. But yes, among mainstream systems, terrible. And I don't think it's better in Japan. It's not like the Saturn, you know what I mean? Where in the US, we did not get a lot of great Saturn RPGs, but if you lived in Japan, game on.
Yeah.
So this one, though, like, it almost reminds me of Star Wars at some parts.
This part here?
Yeah.
I can... Yeah, I can hear it. I don't know that my mind would have gone there, but when you say it, I can follow you there. Yeah. This was the moment though where it really felt big to me. Not this moment, the one just before. That's like, wow. Now we're dealing with like a movie. Because that was the other thought I had about this. Is this would be just as at home in a big blockbuster movie.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah,
this could be Indiana Jones Part 5 or something. Whatever
right.
they're going to do next.
Supposedly there is going to be a fifth one, yeah. Anyway, this is an amazing track. This is a really great addition to the episode. We're getting close to the end. My next track is my second to last of the 10. And it's going to be kind of a radical departure. So far we've tried to keep the tracks kind of basically flowing, pretty well, kind of creating a sonic narrative. But this one is where we really kind of have a big divergence. So anyone who's fallen asleep, hopefully wake up. It is from one of Nintendo's newest IPs, and it's one that I really, really love. It's called ARMS. Switch exclusive so far. And this is the music to the bonus stage where you're getting your new weapons, your new arms. It's called Get Arms. It's composed by Atsuko Asahi and or Yasuhika Iwata. Let's dig in. Get Arms from Arms, composed by Atsuko Asahi and or Yasuaki Iwata. So Hugh and I were talking about this track, and there's no right or wrong here, but we just came away with such different responses to this game. What did you get out of this one, Hugh?
I heard this and I said, this sounds like a 1970s police movie, like a police chase movie. Like there's a cop and he's got the big sideburns and he's wearing a brown jacket, like he's an undercover cop, right?
Okay.
Balding a little bit, and he's chasing someone in the car right now.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, and it's okay, it's great. I mean, there's no right or wrong answer here, but I don't get that at all. I get like this big party, like this big kind of block party thing with neon lights, and I would put it, the bright slap bass puts it more in the 80s, and the brass hits puts it more in the 80s for me than the 70s. I can tell you what's happening in the game. Again, this is the bonus stage, and arms are what you use as weapons. It's ostensibly a boxing game, but it's really kind of more of an enclosed shooter game, kind of like Virtual On, with a cartoony boxing motif. Okay?
Yeah.
And so you rack up enough points that you get to do the bonus game, and you're basically, there's like Christmas packages flying by, and you're trying to hit them and knock them into the bin, and then you get those arms, and this is what's playing while that's happening. And when you get an arm, it will show the arms kind of like the character who they're native to, and he's kind of going like this with the arms and say, you got this. It makes this big kind of shimmer, like bling kind of thing. And that really adds to the music because it just works so well with the music, the sound effect. And over the course of a bonus, unless you are just terrible, you're hearing that sound over and over again. So I love it.
Yeah.
So...
yeah, it's a very fun song. Very, very fun song. It's just, I'm just all picturing 70s cop movie.
Okay, yeah, and again, there's no right or wrong to that. There's no right or wrong. Let's, just for fun, listeners, what do you think? Cop chase or block party?
The cop chase goes through a block party.
There you go.
Everyone has to scatter, and the cars are driving through. Yeah,
there you go. Yeah. Okay. There you go. You just reconciled this whole thing for us. Yeah. So I believe now you've got 2 tracks left. So what do you got next?
My last Falcom track, I promise, from Trails of Cold Steel 2. This was released surprisingly a lot in this decade in America. It came out on PS3, Vita, and most recently PS4. And this is the main battle music. It's called Heated Mind. All right, so again, Falcom Sound Team JDK, kind of the same crew. Hayato Sonata, Takahiro Yunosuga, which I mispronounced, Yukihiro Jindo, and Toshiharu Okajima. Apologies to all. So yeah, this is like one of my favorite battle themes from any game, really. Like, you hear this 100 times in the game, unless you want to just skip the the Legend of Heroes games don't really have random battles. They have like enemies in the overworld that you can choose to fight or run away from. But you hear it a lot if you like to, do a lot of grinding. And I enjoy this one a lot. And then it's got a lot of it's a very Falcom-y sounding song because it's like a rock song with violin. They do that in a lot of their games. So right around the 1 minute mark in this game, they break out the violin.
Yeah, well, it's just another one of those examples of it has heavy, but it's not heavy.
Yeah.
And there's actually a particular track it makes me think of. It reminds me of the random battle theme from Mystic Quest.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, our next track, and I don't know, would we call this my final track? We have the outro coming.
The outro. The penultimate track.
The penultimate track.
Yes.
Is another return to the Gran Turismo series and another return to the Gran Turismo menu system, although this is Gran Turismo 5. And the name of the track is Mirage from Keme Adachi. Relax and enjoy. And that was Mirage from Gran Turismo 5 on the PS3, composed by Kemi Adachi. What'd you think?
Like it. It reminds me sort of vaguely of Jaguar XJ220. That's not the way to pronounce it. On Sega CD. The Jaguar game on Sega CD. Not to be confused with the Jaguar CD. It has a menu selection screen that, like this part right here that's playing, it's a little similar.
Okay. Yeah, I love the Jaguar XJ220 soundtrack. I love it. This is similar. I mean, we talked about it with Gran Turismo Sport, the big menu suite. This game actually has even more menu music than Gran Turismo Sport because it has two different menus you can choose from. You can choose jazz music or you can choose lounge music. And of course, this is from the lounge collection. Yeah. So, but no, it is a fantastic track. I've had it on loop for hours before, again, not paying focused attention to it, but just working on paperwork and letting it go in the background. There is the big pearly things. Sounds like a 70s kind of organ. I thought for sure that was the same sample that 07 used in Lico Fanele. I went back and listened. It's not the same, but it's so close that it's a very forgivable mistake. That little pling thing right there. I don't know. It's just, there are tracks that are fun. There are tracks that are chill. There are only so many tracks that manage to be both chill and fun at the same time. And this is really one of those. This is a really special example as far as that goes, I think.
Yeah,
so,
I feel like this song could fit into a lot of different games.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and it could work outside of a game too. Yeah.
Yeah. I could see like an RPG using this as a menu also.
Yeah. Yep, I could too. It doesn't really have a racing game. It doesn't really scream racing game, but they make it work. Anyway, so time for your final track.
Yeah, final track. Let's go to Nintendo 3DS and a game called Bravely Default, which was a Square Enix RPG. And let's go with the main overworld theme. It's called Land of Light and Shadow. So yeah, Bravely Default. The composer is Revo, which is like actually more of a band. I mean, it is a band, and they do like a lot of anime and kind of fantasy soundtracks.
Cool.
And, so yeah, what'd you think of this?
Well, to me, it sounds like an alternate history where the Titanic doesn't sink and makes it safely to America, but Rose gets away from Caledon Hockley, and everyone except for him is happy.
Yeah.
You know, this part coming up here, the little, just a second here. Yeah, that's where he spills all over himself trying to chase after her. I mean, it's so bright. I was really surprised to find out this was an overworld theme. It doesn't sound like it, does it?
Yeah, no, it sounds like an ending theme to me.
Yeah, that's what I would have thought had you not told me otherwise.
Yeah, like you've just triumphed over evil. But no, this is just you are walking around.
Okay, all right. And Lunar, Sega CD, I think, had a similarly bombastic overworld theme.
Yeah. Yeah, if I'm remembering, Lunar and Lunar 2 are two of the soundtracks I listen to at least once a year.
Okay. Yeah. No, this is, I don't know, I guess it's sort of an end credits theme. It's your final track of the day.
Yeah.
So, that just leaves the outro. But before we get to the outro, why don't you shout out your show?
Oh, yeah. So, Retro Game Club. It's a podcast where we talk about retro game stuff, as the name implies. And we tend to focus on, like, programming and, other kind of do-it-yourself projects. So we do a lot of, like, technical stuff on there.
Okay. Do you have any real big moments that either just came up or are just about to come up?
Do we? I don't know. We're up to about 30 episodes right now. I think our 30th episode should be coming out soon. Depending on when this releases, we might try and do some sort of year-end show. I don't know, though. We've talked a little bit about doing some kind of year-end show, but haven't really locked it down yet. Okay.
Where can people find your show?
On the internet. So just Google Retro Game Club podcast, and you'll find it. So it's retrogameclub.net or, iTunes and all that stuff.
Their logo is an old zip drive.
Yes, I made that in about 40 seconds.
Okay. My logo was made in MS Paint.
Okay, all right.
So my show is called Nerd Noise Radio. It is a mixtape-style video game music podcast where, as I said earlier in the show, I'm trying to be as Hearts of Space as I can get away with, given the format and the subject matter. I am just finishing up my third year of the show. Episode 50 will come out in December. My shows very rarely have hardly any talking. It's a brief intro, uninterrupted music block designed to take you on a journey, and then a housekeeping outro, kind of like Hearts of Space. But episode 50 is a special occasion, focusing on the previous 49 years. It'll be a very different format, just this once, very different format. Multiple short punctuated music blocks with a lot of talking in between about the episodes. So if you're new to the show, it's a great one to tune in for, because it'll tell you the story about all the back ones, and then you know what to go looking for. It can be found nerdnoiseradio.blogspot.com, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Podbean, iTunes, wherever podcasts are sold. So definitely, if you're a fan of Hughes, check me out. If you're a fan of me, check Hughes out. Oh, yeah. This episode will be simulcast on both of our feeds, so listen to it on whichever feed you follow. If you follow both of them, listen to it twice. And this is officially a one-off. This is something that we're doing the once, and that's all that's planned right now. But if there is enough of a groundswell, if there's enough of an outcry from his listeners or from mine or from both, then we can always look into the possibility of doing this again. With our schedules, I doubt we'll be able to make it an all-the-time thing, but it could be an occasional, ongoing thing. So the power is yours. If you want more of this, let us know.
Yeah, I'm always happy to talk about video game music.
Great, me too. Okay, so to bring this thing out, we are going to hear In That Holiday Mood from Miitopia on the 3DS, composed by Toshiyuki Sudo, Shinji Ushiroda, Yumi Takahashi, and or Megumi Inoue. Since we're not going to come back, after this, why don't we share our thoughts on this track beforehand?
Yeah, so I thought this sounded like a slowed down Katamari Damacy song.
Okay.
So if you played those games, they have a very distinctive soundtrack. Those all came out last decade, so I really wasn't able to include one. There was a Vita one, but the Vita game wasn't that great. But yeah, and then it starts off a little slow, and then about 30 or so seconds in, it really like hits you over the head with a holiday-like sound.
Yeah, except the holiday they're going for isn't like Christmas or Thanksgiving. It's the British holiday. It's vacation.
Okay.
In the game, it's what plays when you take a vacation. And it's got this great kind of paper cutout mock-up of 2 islands with a little boat that goes between, and then like fireworks and stuff start going off on the destination island kind of thing. It's really cute. The music is islandy, but it's got kind of these magical flourishes, kind of the harp bling,
Yeah.
and to me, it doesn't strike me as holiday or vacation. It just strikes me as kind of a general parade of delights, some sort of magic moment that's special and memorable, so, but it's a lovely track. It's what we're going to take you out with. Thank you so much for listening, and we will see you on our respective shows and the next time we do this, whenever that may be.
Yeah, this was really fun, so thank you, and hope to hear from you all later.